Hello there, and welcome to another episode of What the Tech. I'm your host, Rolando, and over here to this side, probably the fun side. Let's call it the fun side for today. Is
The fun
Dave Kelly,
side.
my co-host. Dave,
Hey,
what's up?
Rolando, thanks so much for the intro. Everything's fantastic over here. How you doing?
Awesome. I'm doing fine, man. I've been waiting another week to do this with you again, and I'm so looking forward to it. We have
Yeah.
a great guest, somebody that I've known for quite some time, and I've wanted to get her on our show, but she's so famous and so hard to get a hold of. And I know she's probably in the green room back there chuckling. That I've been wanting to get her on and squeeze her in at the right time, and what she's got to say is really appropriate for what a lot of the folks that are listening to us are probably watching us or on the playback. And so I want to take this time to say, if you're watching us today on any of the platforms, feel free to chat, send your comments. You have questions, go ahead, push those through. We'd be glad to answer it now or even after if you're watching us during the playback. Our team will also answer your questions.
Yep.
All right,
Absolutely.
Dave, we've got a lot to cover with Charinna today. I'm so looking forward to asking her some of these questions today. Ori, why don't we go to the trivia question? Go ahead, Dave. Take over on this one.
All right, so I thought this was pretty interesting. So, you know what? There's a lot of early adopters that are out there. Apple CarPlay, I'll tell you, when this got released and they started using it and adopting it in vehicles, people just fell in love with it. So the question is real simple. Which car was the very first to have a full version of CarPlay? The Ford Focus, the Ferrari FF, Tesla Model S, or the Mercedes-Benz S-Class? So we'll get to that answer at the end of the show, and we'll make sure to ask Charinna what Charinna thinks as well.
Oh, absolutely. She's an expert in so many things, and I know she's an expert in her telecom, and she was saying something about fashion. So we may pull out a fashion thing or two that I may not have a clue, but we'll tap her knowledge on that. All right. So before we bring Sharina out, one of the reasons that we're bringing her on is that we're about the 1 year mark with this whole COVID and quarantining, and a lot of businesses have either changed their business practices or are actually in undergoing major transformation a year now. And we wanted to check in with somebody who has got their finger on what a lot of businesses are doing. They touch a wide variety of businesses, so we wanted to get a feel for what she's got to say. So let me tell you a little bit about Charinna. Charinna's an industry expert when it comes to the telecom sector, and she's now with Data Canopy, which has a number of infrastructure as a service products and services that they offer to businesses. And she's going to help us break down what's going on with platforms. She's going to also break down a little bit. We're going to get into Teams and Skype for Business and how that's all playing out, but also a little word on Data Canopy. Data Canopy is a leader in their industry with infrastructure as a service, and they focus on a company's needs as well as their budget and future goals. I found that very interesting. So without further ado, let's bring on Charinna Kushnir. Hello there,
Hey
Hey,
Charinna.
Charinna.
guys, nice to see everybody.
Hey, nice to see you too. Where are you checking in with us from today?
I am checking in with you from our headquarters in Columbia, Maryland. As you can see, we've got this side Data Canopy sign right behind us in our
Oh,
corporate
wow.
office.
So you're like across the river. I'm on the Virginia side of things.
I am across the river, and it's a
Now,
beautiful day. We have some sunshine and happiness.
yes, I know. I know. I was going to say, which is the better side? The Virginia side or the Maryland side of the river?
I think that would be up for debate. I think I think if you're talking about restaurants, it might be the Virginia side of the river. If
I'd
we want
meet
to
you
talk about
halfway.
food,
Halfway. DC has some really good restaurants.
I'll meet you in Georgetown. What time should I be there?
You know what? Right after the show's over. All
Not that
right.
Boston isn't great, Dave, because we love that too.
I know. And
Yeah, I'm
it's
like,
out
I
of the
have no
way.
dog in this fight. I don't know. I don't know. I flip the coin.
Well, Sharina, thanks for coming on today. Thanks for being on here and in bringing us some value add to folks that are going to be listening and watching us. And before we get things started, I wanted to play you something to get your thoughts on what one of the companies. So Ford has announced one of the things that they're doing with hybrid working and how that affects their employees. And they have, over almost 200,000 employees, and about 86,000 of those are going to be what they consider blue collar workers that are non-factory workers that can work in and out of the office. And we have this clip that I want to play you and get your thoughts on the other side of the clip.
Majority of those non-place dependent employees feel as though they can be more productive from home. There are some employees though that can't wait to get back into the office because they feel that they're more productive.
Ford announced Wednesday it's evolving and modernizing the way their employees work to what they're dubbing a hybrid work model, a mix of remote and in-office work.
Which essentially gives employees choice around where and how they get work done.
The feedback this big three company is getting. Productivity is up among employees working remotely overall, but the plan is still in its infancy. How many people will choose to work from home and how often still open questions. Ford plans to survey workers again in the next few weeks to get a better idea.
All right. Were you able to get some of that?
I was, and it's very relevant.
Okay. So tell me, what do you think about what you heard? Just give me your thoughts on what Ford is planning on doing.
I think that is the wave of the future. I think that COVID accelerated the timelines, Rolando, on that hybrid work environment. And I think a lot of companies and organizations didn't even know they had the capacity to have the hybrid approach to working, but now they do because they were forced into it when everybody was sent home.
Right.
I definitely think that the ability to use technologies like Microsoft voice-enabled Teams has helped to revolutionize and streamline the way that we interact. But I will continue to say that there is something to be said for face-to-face interactions. We here at Data Canopy are working in a hybrid environment, sometimes in the office and sometimes remotely from home. And we find that the mix of being in the office together as well as working remote has kind of given us that happy place of both.
Yeah, absolutely. So you know what, and you kind of answered it already, but on that video clip, Ford, they mentioned the productivity gains as a result of remote work using tools such as Microsoft Teams. Are the organizations that you're talking to, are they seeing similar trends using collaboration tools like Teams?
Absolutely, Dave. We are. We actually use Microsoft voice-enabled Teams here as an organization ourselves at Data Canopy. And, I won't tell you that it's the perfect product all the time because that wouldn't be true. But it is a great collaboration tool to do voice, video conferencing, audio conferencing. It works perfect in those environments. Right. I will say that for companies that have large, maybe call centers or contact centers, it may not be the perfect tool for that particular environment. But for conference calls, for audio conferencing, for video conferencing, it's a great tool.
And so it's a great tool. And one of the things that we've been trying to communicate with our audience here, especially for those folks that are still using Skype for Business, is there are a lot of organizations that are still on Skype for Business. And I look at the clock, there's 130 days left until Skype for Business is retired. What should businesses be doing, or organizations, not all businesses, but organizations that are on Skype for Business, what should they be doing to get ready for that transition to Teams, which is the replacement for Skype for Business?
It's a great question, Ron. So the good news is that Microsoft gave us a lot of time. So as a Microsoft partner here ourselves, we're a CSP at Data Canopy. We've been working very closely with a lot of organizations to help them transition. So initially when Microsoft came out and said that they were going to shift from Skype to Teams, they said that they weren't going to allow any other providers to get involved in those transitions. But what they very quickly realized is that they're really good at what they do, but not necessarily great at voice. So now they have a lot of partners coming in to work with them on the enablement on the voice side.
Talk about that, Charinna. Let me just
Sure.
stop you for 1 second, because some folks may or may not understand this. bifurcation between the voice and the data side and the collaboration tools and the voice tools. If you could take just about 30 seconds,
Sure.
so folks could get an essence for what you're saying about voice versus the other part of the Skype for Business or Microsoft Office suite.
Absolutely. So it's a great question. Microsoft, if you go on their website and you try to enable what we call PSTN access, which is dial tone, you will not find that to be a simple process. I think that they purposely made it complicated. It's better to bring in an expert on voice, and there are a lot of organizations out there who are experts on voice and know how to voice enable teams. From there, you still need a Microsoft partner like Data Canopy to take over the Microsoft licensing to have that second component. So you need a voice provider as well as a CSP to have a successful deployment. What Microsoft realized pretty early on, and what we saw especially, Rolando, in the beginning and Dave, of COVID, was they weren't great at porting. That was not their area of expertise, and they didn't have enough phone numbers for the demand that they had for voice enablement in the beginning.
Right.
And that's where we saw them fall down. Microsoft has one network operation center for voice, where organizations that are experts on voice have multiple, 3 and 4 network operation centers. That's kind of what separates them from going to Microsoft directly to do a project like that. You're really better off using somebody that's an expert on voice, and then somebody like Data Canopy that's an expert on the Microsoft licensing side in combination to have a successful Teams deployment.
And I would imagine the larger the organization, the more complex the whole project can be, because if you've got multiple sites, different departments, folks that have different responsibility, you really need somebody that understands how to navigate that voice component as well as data and put it all together so it works seamless for organizations that may have multiple offices.
Yeah, and it sort of leads me, Rolando, into sort of my next point here, which is a lot of organizations have servers on their prem. So when COVID occurred, what happened was everybody was scrambling to figure out how we're going to send people home to work. So as a Microsoft partner, we are able to leverage Azure. We are able to leverage AWS. So we helped customers not only successfully deploy voice, but we were able to help them with their data migrations. A lot of companies that were not ready for total cloud data had to get ready at a pace maybe that they weren't necessarily prepared for.
Yeah.
Wow.
You know, so there's obviously a lot of organizations that have adopted and have migrated towards the cloud.
Sure.
I know that there's a lot more that haven't. So what would be the benefits for those folks that haven't moved to it or aren't even really looking? But what's the benefit for the businesses that are migrating from an on-premise solution to a cloud-based solution?
It's such a great question, and sort of a very open-ended question, Dave, because there's a lot of benefits. A lot of organizations who still have prem-based equipment are utilized in a way that is not efficient. They may have servers that are over capacity or under capacity that are pulling a lot of power. Maybe the servers are out of space. So when we start migrating our customers to the cloud, we are just seeing this enhancement in their workflow. They're getting their data faster. It's more secure. It's they're able to put more applications into the cloud. So there are cost advantages to moving to the cloud. So there are so many different reasons that a customer should move to the cloud. It's very much like what we saw early on in the voice migration, right? Where customers still had a PBX on their premises. And then we saw the adoption of hosted voice. It's the same thing with servers. We saw a lot of customers that were keeping their servers in their IT closets, but then what was happening? The closets would overheat. Sometimes we saw them flood. Sometimes they weren't secure. So then all of these things became reasons for customers to start migrating their data to the cloud. So then we have a full end-to-end migration solution, voice and data.
Interesting. And one of the things that you said a lot, for the cloud, and the cloud, although it's a generic term for essentially infrastructure or data, or even in this case now voice that can reside in maybe a hosted environment, there are different types of clouds, aren't there, Charinna? And
There
I
are.
think for some customers, the private versus public cloud and different clouds, they may mean something different to them. So the word cloud, let's define cloud a little bit for those folks that are maybe not yet moved to the cloud and don't may not know exactly what a cloud is, because there's different folks at different stages of their journey to the cloud. So let's talk a little bit about what it is and what it's not.
Yeah, in 2013, Tina Fey did an ad during the Super Bowl for Best Buy. And during that ad, I think she said it so much better than anybody else. If you've seen the ad where she says, "Where is the cloud? What is the cloud? Can I touch the cloud?" And I think that in general, a lot of people still are in that mindset of the cloud is just something that they don't 100. It's an abstract concept almost, right?
Right.
So when we start talking about public clouds, we are talking about the AWSs, the Alibabas, the Azures, the Google. These are all public cloud environments, and almost every end user has either heard of them or is starting to think about a migration. Again, not a simple thing to go alone. There are a lot of components that go into a cloud migration. There are costs associated with cloud migration, like egress fees, getting your data out of the cloud, what's in there. These are all different parts of the journey that Data Canopy works with customers on. Now, in our private cloud environment, which we built on VMware, that is hosted in our data centers with our hardware. We don't get things like egress fees when we're in our own private cloud environment. But that's sort of where we start to delineate. Some applications require public cloud. Some applications do great in a private cloud environment. Where we shine as an organization is asking the whys of a customer. Why are we trying to do this? What are the benefits? And then from there, unraveling what the customer's needs are. Ro, I can do maybe a little case study that might help some customers understand a little bit better.
Absolutely. And go ahead, jump into it. I don't want
Awesome.
to stop you.
We're on a roll, right?
You are, indeed. So go for it.
So we have a rather large customer that worked with us for about 9 months, trying to unravel what was best for them. The company is called Itivity, and they deal in the microseconds of stock trading. So if you're using an application like a Robinhood or Fidelity, they're the software that drives those types of high frequency stock trading.
Interesting.
There's only 5 organizations like that in the world. So their goal was to figure out how they could be the first company to put their applications in the cloud, which for somebody like them could be very risky rather than having all of their servers on their premise where they could theoretically control them. Yeah. But they saw the value in making sure that their data was protected and in the correct environment. We spent 8 months working on understanding every application. Where is the best spot to put it? What are the needs of those applications? What are the needs of their employees? What is the best for their remote staff? Because we were in the midst of COVID as we're unraveling this project with them. In the end, we are doing a hybrid environment for them. So some of their applications are in the public cloud and some of them are in the private cloud. And that combination gave them a very robust solution.
Well, so it sounds like there's no one size fits all when it comes to the cloud for organizations. It's really on a case by case basis. Some organizations are going to be able to move everything to the cloud and it be a public cloud. And in some cases, that's not the case at all, where they're going to be doing that from what you're telling us, right?
Yeah, and the reality is you need a partner that's agnostic. You need a partner that listens and isn't trying to put a round peg in a square hole and understands, because 100% you're correct. It is not one size fits all in any way, shape, or form.
And so I want to ask you to touch on that one size fits all. So getting back to a little bit of the stuff that we were talking about with Ford, a lot of companies now are looking at returning to the office. Right. And there is no one template for everybody, but I wanted to get your thoughts on a little bit of what they said about return to offices. I want to also probe your brain about what you think companies are doing as well with this migration back to the office and how it relates to the services that the Data Canopy offers. Go ahead, Ori, roll that.
Seen, and with some other measures that have been put in place, we want to test if that response is still the same.
Before the pandemic hit, Ford had been pretty open about their facility upgrades. The 30-acre site plan for Michigan Central in Detroit, where 5,000 employees had been slated to work, helping to boost the surrounding neighborhoods, namely Corktown, and transforming the Research and Engineering Center in Dearborn into a high-tech efficient campus for thousands of designers, engineers, and product development workers.
What's that going to mean when those businesses, those shops, restaurants, Fairlane Mall perhaps, were hoping that those employees would be coming back?
We've had multiple conversations with the city of Dearborn around the concept of hybrid and potentially what that could mean. And quite frankly, they were all excited because it'll evolve, what Dearborn can actually do in the future.
Ford envisions collaborative workspaces with upgraded displays where 75% of office space could be shared or we space, employees reserving locations to use, and much more investment in collaborative technologies, which employees have already been using much more during the pandemic.
Viewing this more through the eyes of hospitality than traditional office, right? Because when people come in, they're going to book a space that best suits their needs. If you provide employees that flexibility and the freedom to work where they want to work, when they want to work, and then you give them this great workspace to be able to come in and collaborate and innovate and do things with your peers, I think it's going to be phenomenal for talent attraction and retention.
Hillary Golston, Fox 2 News.
All right. So I want to get your thought. I don't even want to say anything. What do you think about what you just saw?
I think it's the way that almost every organization is going to move forward. I truthfully do. I think we will find that more and more, there's some fatigue. People have been at home for a long time. I think there is an overwhelming need to be around people. I will say for myself, I was a little shocked yesterday to get on an airplane and see that it was at 99% capacity.
Where were you going?
I came back from Florida, from sunshine and happiness, as I call it.
I'm jealous. Sunshine.
Sunshine. And, I think I was a little shocked to see that many people in a closed-in space. So to Ford's point, they're making it easy for their customers and their employees to decide that it's okay to and safe for them to work from home as well as from their office, which then in turn helps the economy. So it's a win-win for all parties involved.
No.
And I definitely believe that almost every organization is going to have some kind of hybrid approach. And it's going to be imperative that the cloud solutions that they have in place, both from a data standpoint as well as from a voice standpoint, are solid.
Right. And so what you're seeing is customers. So basically, one of the things I want to ask you, when you're talking to those customers, are you hearing that they're going to this type of hybrid approach like Ford? Because you've got companies like Google that are announcing actually they're getting more buildings constructed. They're going to put in more office space rather than less. And so we just wanted to see because you talk to a variety of folks out there. What, are they telling you they're taking kind of the Ford approach? Are they going down the route of a little more like Google where they're actually getting more office space or less office space?
So the answer is it depends on what part of the country. So we work nationwide as well as internationally. So for example, in the UK, our partners are telling us that it's going to be summertime, probably the end of summer, before they have enough people vaccinated that they feel comfortable to even delve into a hybrid work type of environment. If you talk about the East Coast, Rolando and Dave, you'll see more companies moving towards that type of work quicker. The West Coast is slower. So my answer to you is it depends on what part of the world that you're in, will depend on how quick that adoption is.
So you're saying us on the East Coast we're Johnny on
we're a
the
little
spot?
snappier.
So whether it's East Coast or West Coast, COVID has forced folks to find a new way for their workers to work, whether it be 100% work at home, a hybrid model, 100% back into the office once things change and time progresses and people are vaccinated, etc. So COVID has obviously affected workers with where they're doing their business, but how has COVID impacted the way that businesses are migrating to the cloud, is it a mad rush? Is your phone just ringing off the hook and it's just a flood of interest, or has anything really changed?
It's such a good question. So when this started in March, I will say it was a breakneck pace for us to literally get people migrated to the cloud literally as quickly as we could. Now we are going back and looking at customers who migrated on their own and now are looking at their bill saying, we didn't have the budget maybe to do this in the way that we did it. So they're asking us to go back and reevaluate how they have migrated and the costs associated with migration.
Yeah.
So in the beginning, it was the breakneck, let's get it in there. Now, specifically for customers who did it on their own, they're now asking us to reevaluate their costs and looking at ways to optimize their environments and making sure that they have the correct migration path. Because that's two very different issues and problems.
So what I'm hearing is that some clients, they rushed it because they had no choice. They're looking at what they're spending, and now they're dialing it back saying, listen, we need an expert here that can help us find our path to success.
Correct.
Wow. Well, that's so, because I imagine like when people were told to go to work from home, and some in late February, some March, some April, everybody, pretty much all of the big companies and even mid-sized companies all started doing it around the same 2 to 3 weeks. And they realized, we got problems, NASA. And as you're talking about how things are changing, that's one of the other things I wanted to see what your thoughts were on where is it going. So 20 and 21 and beyond, what's down the road for not just the cloud, but let's just say infrastructure as a service, and how companies, what companies should be looking at, or any organization should be looking at if they're thinking about what's coming down the line that maybe it's not available today.
So here's sort of my stance on it. I think that we're going to see a big change in our colo business. So I think we're going to see a lot less companies putting their infrastructure, putting actual hardware in colos, and many more moving to straight cloud environments. And a lot of that has to do with security, customers needing to feel comfortable around the security involved with the cloud and putting their applications and making sure that nobody is going to touch them. So I think that we'll see a big shift in our colo business, more of a shift to the public and private cloud environments, and then a big uptick in our DR practice, and making sure that the recovery time on applications is quick and efficient. People don't want to be down. And I think that we've seen, especially over the last few months, we've seen some pretty terrible things happen in terms of weather, like what happened in Texas.
Yes.
That affected a lot of customers.
Yeah, and I think those weather events haven't gotten any milder. They've gotten more severe, if anything, the last several years, and more frequent. And folks like Data Canopy and yourself can help, organizations that want to have the right tools in place should those weather events occur, to know that their infrastructure is resilient and will withstand those types of impacts.
And I will say this, Dave and I talked about this a little bit before the show started today. When that weather event happened in Texas, some co-location sites were not prepared for that type of weather event, and they lost their generators.
Oh, wow.
They lost generators. And
so are you talking about like a whole data center went dark?
Correct.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Wow.
And we were moving customers into our colos at rates that we could barely keep up with because our data centers were lit.
Wow. So what the moral of the story is, check out who you have as a partner when you're co-locating, and that maybe not all the eggs are in one basket, essentially on the East Coast or the West Coast or in the South, where, a couple years ago we had the different storms that came up the East Coast and basically knocked out a lot of stuff in New Jersey and New York. And actually, I remember a customer, I won't say their name, a very large customer in Manhattan that has politicians in it, let's put it that way, their servers flooded and whatnot. And they were out because they were basically on-prem for everything. And so knowing who you're using, like Data Canopy, that maybe has their eggs in several different baskets geographically, will benefit them.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, I love all this stuff. Charinna, we could talk for like at least 2 hours because there's like 500 other things I want to ask you, but I don't want to keep you too long here. And what I want to say, just kind of in summary, is that if you're looking for additional solutions in the way of infrastructure as a service, you need guidance in this journey, folks like Charinna. And how should folks follow you or get a hold of you if they want to follow up, or they okay, I want to hear more about that?
LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn, Charinna Kushnir. And you can follow Data Canopy on Facebook and on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Thanks for letting us know. And before we wrap, Dave, do we have an answer to that trivia question?
I have the answer. The question is, does anyone else have the answer or a smart enough guess? Ori, let's pull it up. All right, so black and white or blue and white, who was the first, which car had the full version of CarPlay? Was it the Focus, the FF, the Model S, or the S-Class? Charinna, give me a guess here.
She's a car gal. She should know this one.
I think it's Ford.
You think it's the Ford?
I do think it's the Ford.
All right, well, we're going to throw up the answer. We're going to show a picture of the FF. So I thought this was pretty interesting. You know, I'm a car guy myself. The Ferrari FF, very unique car in that it's a front engine V10, naturally aspirated. But the Ferrari FF, that was the first car to have the full version of CarPlay. I was almost expecting it to be Tesla.
Me too. I would have thought it was Tesla because they're more techie oriented, right?
But I'll tell you, you know what? My Mazda has CarPlay. I didn't care for it when I first got it. It really wasn't a requirement of mine, and now I don't want to go anywhere without it. So, so there it is. Early adoption.
Early adoption is, well, there you go. You got to enjoy that. You know, funny story. The first time, Dave, do you remember when you got into my car? The first time I picked you up?
Yep.
I thought, this guy is so big, he doesn't fit in this car. And I don't have a teeny car like you do, Charinna. A little Sportster convertible type of car. This guy's he's like a football player size, you know?
Do you know what? It's so funny. If you saw the car or the cars that I've driven, I don't know what it is. I love small, tiny cars. It's very
he was
weird.
In there like, and the seat all the way to the back. And I was like, we're in an SUV. This is not a teeny little, you know, roadster car, you know, one of these old Porsches where, you know, you're almost down to the ground. And he fills out the whole seat and all the way back. I'm like, I don't think I've ever had anybody this big get on in this car.
I'll take that as a compliment today.
Well, let's tell the folks, Ori, what we've got coming up. All right. So on the 30th, we've got an unbelievable featurette of new Yealink devices. We cannot wait to bring those to you. We're going to do it up Global Tech style, What the Tech style, and bring you all the latest around those. So stay tuned, mark those on your calendars. And I want to remind you, if you love this content, you want to hear more about it, don't forget to like and subscribe. Let me just tell you why you want to do that. Because we come out with content that is not on the live, and we push it out to our audience. So if you follow, subscribe, I don't know what platform you're on, hit all those bells and whistles, hit all the buttons, you will get these little tidbits that we sneak out of the ear and boom, let our audience know. So make sure you join, be part of the community. Yeah, Dave, right? Be part of the club.
Be part of the club. You know what? We bring a lot of different things for different types of users and different types of markets. It's not just what a headset, not just what a speakerphone can do. It's really how can a product that we offer, how can a service that's offered from one of our partners benefit your business to be successful in the future.
That's right. And Charinna, any parting words before we wrap up?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I really have enjoyed my time. We really appreciate being part of this podcast today and getting to spend some time with you guys.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. See you the next time.